Welcome to Tales from the Trenches Tuesdays. Today, it is my honor to have T. Clay Buck on with us.
Here's a story of a fundraiser who was launching his very own web show. Each episode is very short due to edits, so it can really flow. Here's a story of a podcast guest star who was busy raising money of their own. They were each great in their own way, fundraising in its own. Till the one day when Jack asked a guest to join him, and they knew it was much more than a jest, that these guests must somehow form a resource. That's the way they all became the podcast guests. The podcast guests. The podcast guests. That's the way they became the podcast guests.
T. Clay Buck has been in fundraising for over 30 years. Clay, the T is silent, held just about every position in fundraising, from development assistant to grant writer to chief development officer. He started his own individual giving and fundraising communications consulting firm in 2018. He's the creator of the Fundraiser's Planner and co-host of the #1 fundraising podcast, Fundraising is Funny. Clay makes his home in Las Vegas, Nevada, where he teaches strategic planning and fundraising at UNLV, and is owned by two poorly trained golden retrievers who've mastered the art of the ask, especially at dinner time. So welcome, Clay.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
So in a former life, I was, we were running a capital campaign, and there was a gentleman on the board of directors who had immense capacity. And he said, Jack, I give of my time.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I give back. And I said to him, okay, but I can't go to the bank and say, Steve has given me 27 hours. That's not going to help to build or fix or whatever our campaign was doing at the time. So I said, all your colleagues around the table are also giving of their time and of their treasure. So how do we...
Well, so first, I don't know if this is true in Canada, so please forgive me for not knowing this, but in the United States, you can actually track volunteer hours as revenue and income. So you can put it...
You can't in Canada.
You can't.
You can't in Canada.
And also it's tricky and it requires a lot of resources, and, please consult your financial advisor and your CFO, right? Don't go just counting hours because Clay said on a podcast you could, right? Check your local listings. And also you're exactly correct. You're 100% correct. And there are folks that do see it that way. I think your response was spot on, because I also do think that based on your level of engagement with an organization, there are different expectations. I am a big fan. I have I sound like a politician here, but my thinking on this has evolved. I used to be, board 100% giving, right? All of that. I am now much more, let's involve people on our boards of directors with different experiences, different backgrounds. My goodness, what would happen if we actually had people on boards governing the organization who had actually been recipients of our service? And we stopped looking at board membership as just a financial obligation or a connection obligation and a caring about the cause. And therefore, let's relax on 100% board giving and encourage more what is meaningful to you and engage in the way that you can. That said, I also don't know how you accept the role as a fiduciary of an organization and not give. Like, it makes no sense to me at all. So
Right.
In that particular situation, and I know many of us have heard it 1,000 times, there's a bit of me that goes, how was that person recruited? What were they brought on? And what were the expectations? So it's simple to me as, let's make expectations very clear. Make sure people know what is expected of you to sit on this board, right?
Yeah. I used to, when I first started off in fundraising, there was a minimum gift, right, that board members had to make. And I'm like, I loathe that because it assumes everyone has equal capacity.
Right.
So what I said to folks was, if you're on the board of directors, it should be in your top 5 charities that you support.
Absolutely.
And if it's not, you have to scratch your head saying, why are you on the board of directors here?
Right.
But there was no specific, I didn't want to see, well, let me see the other ones just to make sure that, we're on par.
Sure. And this is rare. This is very rare. I have served on one board where this culture existed. I was on staff of one board where this culture existed. But, look at the number of organizations I've with and how long I've been in the sector. So 2 out of, so very, very rare. But the culture of open and honest discussion at the board level, right? Where the person who is giving the 5 or the 6-figure gift as part of their board commitment is able to openly and honestly directly talk about that. And there's open discussion about, look, I can't afford that level. I just can't. But what I can do of equal value is this. And so the board itself is having those discussions. And too often it's, let's not, we don't want people to feel bad. Let's not open directly. I'm a big believer. This also comes a bit with age, because I am kind of turning into, the Simpsons cartoon, right? Old man yells at cloud. Like I'm getting close to being that, right? But I'd like to believe that we can have, especially at a governance level, amongst professional adults, open discussions about who's doing what and why and how we're all benefiting and bringing to the table our best selves, and if that's a contribution, if that's time, if that's whatever it is, right?
Yeah, and I think that so many of us have a hard time filling a board to begin with,
right?
That they don't want to rock the boat. I'll never forget, I spoke to a local philanthropist, and he said, Jack, do you want my time or my money? I have lots of money.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
So, everyone kind of has their role. But it's true that, sometimes we have people on the board that we know that we kind of settled by having them on the board because we needed a board, right? And I think that as time goes on, we have to be much more proactive and much more thoughtful about who we have around that table.
Absolutely. And the board itself needs to be part of identifying that. And, you get dollar signs because, oh, we've got this person that's at this thing and they could do this, this, and this for us. There's a couple of things, right? Number one, let's stop asking people to volunteer their expertise, right? I get asked to be on boards because we need help fundraising. That's what I do for a living. Don't ask me to volunteer my time to do what I do, what I get paid to do, right?
Clay, you are 100. I actually turned down a board because they asked me to sit on it to fundraise. I'm like, I actually like what your mission is. I said, I go on there. I said, I don't want to do fundraising.
No. You know where I'm a great, now nobody listening to this start reaching out, but, right, I'm a great board member on the finance committee. Like, I love being on the finance committee. I know it's weird, but because I've been around finances as a fundraiser, I kind of I do pretty well on a finance committee because I ask really dumb questions that are often hard to answer, right? So we do approach it that way. Let's involve people that believe in the mission in different ways that is meaningful to them, not necessarily in their realm of their own expertise. I hear so often, right? Our boards don't give, our board won't help with fundraising. We can't get our board to do anything. More often than not, this is not always true, but more often than not, with some Q&A and digging into it, it gets to, have you asked them to? Have you shared that with them that's your expectation? And how do you ask them? And more often than not, what I hear is, oh, we send the board an invoice every year. Or, oh, they're on the board, they should know. No, I'm sorry. Your board are volunteers and donors just like any other donor. If you're sending your board an invoice for their annual gift, you've made it transactional. Treat your board with the same, hopefully, touchy-feely, lovey-dovey stuff that you do for a donor. Because not only are you engaging in good fundraising and generosity encouragement, but you're also showing the board, your governance, that this is how you treat donors, which gives them a whole level of confidence in, wow, this is how they treat me. How are they treating our other donors, et cetera, right? Boards are humans too.
Yeah.
And they got involved with you more often than not because they care and they want to be a part of the mission. So treat them like a member of the community, not like a business transaction.
Totally. So it's interesting. Let's kind of go off a little bit. So you're a strong data guy. I maintain that the truth is your friend. So what data or goals or things like that should boards and bosses be looking for that they really aren't paying attention to in today's world?
Data quality. I would have answered this question differently 10 years ago. Today I answer it as data quality and security. Data, the collection, the management, the security, the privacy of data. And Canada has very different laws than the United States. You guys are, I think, in my opinion, a bit ahead of us in terms of privacy, in terms of data security. We are not quite there yet. Of course, we're living in the world of GDPR, but regardless of what part of the world you are in, right, data is valuable. And nonprofit data is valuable. People want it. Hackers want your data. And I don't care if it's a list of 5,000 or 500,000. Bad actors are trying to get your data. Data is an asset. Every single record in your database, in your CRM, represents a potential dollar amount. That is revenue. That is potential revenue. And we need to, the time is past. And if you haven't done it already, now is the time to treat our data like an asset, just like any other asset, our building, our finances, etc. Treat it with security, treat it with respect, make sure it's clean, because every single record that you cannot contact somebody because your data quality is bad is revenue lost. We need our boards leading the charge in looking at data as an asset and managing it as an asset. Not, I heard for so much of my career, right? Because I'm not a data guy, I'm data adjacent. I'm a fundraiser who learned how to manage data because I was so often the only one, right? I was the fundraising department, so I had to learn how to do it. And I learned the value of it early on. The potential loss of revenue, the potential loss of position, the potential loss of communications because our data is bad is one of the single biggest issues facing us. And our boards as governance, starting to look at it as an asset and manage it. One of the things that I recommend is actually I borrowed from GDPR is create a committee of the board at the level of the finance committee, the development committee, the market, whatever other committees as the data committee, right? The committee, the governance committee that is in charge of how does this organization manage, deal, acquire, store, deal with our data, and have one person in the organization who is that data point person.
Yeah. And you know, every time I go into a new organization and look at their data, it's always, you know, a dog's breakfast of stuff that's there. And you can spend, you know, years on it. Like you're never going to get it 100%.
No.
But there's nothing worse than, oh, gee, I didn't realize that you owned company ABC and that there's no link, right? So, you know, the Clay owns company ABC.
Right.
Well, ABC's a great donor. Clay hasn't given us 10 cents in decades.
Right.
Well,
I mean, you said it, and I say this all the time, but you said it in the intro, right? The T is silent, like it's a joke. Ha, ha, ha. My first name is Thomas. Nobody has ever called me Thomas. I have always gone by my middle name. It's a family tradition going way back. CRMs can't handle it. They hate it, right?
Right.
And what happens more often than not, if I make a gift on the credit card form, legally, I have, what's the first name on the credit card? Thomas, right? More often than not, I then get all communications. Dear Thomas. Well, if you call me Thomas, you don't know me because I filled out your giving form with Clay. So that's a data capture issue, right? And that, to me, tells me this organization was not looking at what I provided you. We talk so much about the stories we tell of donors, storytelling, right? That we aren't listening to the stories donors tell us. And the stories they're telling us are through their data, what they provide you, how they give, right? Every little data point, every little action point that a donor, like, for example, like let's say on your giving form online, you have the minimum requirements, which are a name, an email address, credit card number, right? But you also want to have on your form other collection fields. You can address, etc. A donor who comes in and tells you all of this information about them, they give you their physical address, they give you their email address, they give you their full name in your contact form, right? They tell you who their spouse is, all of those things. They're saying to you, hey, it's me. Pay attention. This is me. If we're not listening to how they do that and what they're giving to us and what they say, then we're missing the human behind the transaction.
And I would actually say, then why are you asking for it if you're not going to do anything?
Well, Lynn Wester, my co-host on Fundraising is Funny and of the Donor Relations Group, Lynn is in many ways my alter ego and she's braver at saying some things than I am, because I go back to that Southern Baptist, be nice to everybody, right? Don't say anything to rock the boat. And Lynn always says, if you can't afford to thank a donor, you don't deserve to have the donor. And she's not wrong.
I would agree.
You know?
I would agree.
Yeah.
I would agree. Clay, this has been unbelievable. I really appreciate the time that you've given. If folks wanted to get hold of you, how would they go about doing that?
Reach out on LinkedIn. I'm very engaged and respond on LinkedIn. You can also find me online at tcbfundraising.com and reach out to me that way. And I make the circuit. I'm at conferences and stuff. So if you happen to see me or want to cross me, just come say hi. But I'm always open for the conversation. Look forward to talking with folks. Yeah.
Wow. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Likewise.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, folks. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button right here.